Greetings to all the students. I welcome you all on the YouTube platform of NextIS, and you are watching Daily News Analysis, an initiative where we discuss important articles published in the newspapers and the PIB. Today, with the help of this video, the topic that we are going to cover will be terrorism. Second, women, a largest minority in India, India-Bhutan, EIR Program, and Mitra Shakti exercise. So, without wasting time, let's start with the first topic visible over your screen. A statement that comes to our mind is that condemning terrorism should be our principle, not just our convenience. These are the statements given by our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi ji. And this statement exemplifies its testament with respect to the recent attack that we had in last day on Delhi, which has taken 9 lives. So, one more statement that comes to my mind, it was given by our Foreign Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar ji. He said that the decades of cross-border terrorism has not and will not take our ability back to fight terrorism. In this article, in terrorism, the topics that we are going to, the points that we are going to cover will be what exactly the terrorism is, how exactly the causes are, what are the impacts of the terrorism upon the India's social fabric, the challenges that India still surmounts, and then afterwards the way ahead. So without wasting time, let's first start with the very basic meaning of terrorism. आतंकवाद होता है तो क्या होता है? If in very general term, I give you one very basic example. This is terrorism can be defined or constitute the illegitimate force or use of force to achieve some political objective by creating fear or by hurting innocent people. This is very basic definition. अब भारतीय न्याय संहिता आतंकवाद की परिभाषा के बारे में क्या बोलती है? It says that any act with the intent to threaten or likely to threaten the unity, integrity, sovereignty, security and the economic security of India, or with the intent to strike terror or likely to strike terror in the people or any section of the people in India or any foreign country comes under the definition of terrorism, right? Such acts using hazardous materials, explosive, firearms, other means to cause death, bodily harm, destruction of property, interference with the critical infrastructure, all those things come pass into the definition of terrorism. Now the point is, what are the causes of terrorism in India? But before that, we must need to understand that India has had a victim, or I would say India has as a continuous victim of having terrorist attack on its people and its soil. That is starting onwards 1984, 1989, Kargil, then afterwards 2003, then afterwards 2005, Mumbai suburban blast, which took around more than 200 lives. Delhi serial blast in 2006. Then afterwards 2008, Mumbai attack, Uri attack, Pahalgam attack. So many of the attacks have been witnessed by the India. So now when we know that in the past 2 decades, we have a series of terrorist attacks upon the India, then what are those reasons? First, second, how the government is trying to tackle it. Second, third, what are the challenges that we have while going against the menace of this terrorism? तो हम इस आर्टिकल के अंदर उन्हीं सब बातों के बारे में बैठ के चर्चा करेंगे. First thing, or one more thing that I need to make you understand, that during the 2008 attack when we had it upon the India, एक बात जो लगातार भारत के बारे में बोली जाती थी, that 2000 attack on the India gave a startling data that it was a comprehensive failure. It has a comprehensive failure from the point of view of India's security establishment. And this is the only reason we will witness, or we have witnessed, that pre-2008 and post-2008, the initiation taken by the government of India to tackle this terrorism has a great difference. 2008 के बाद आप देखते हैं भारत की सरकार थोड़ा प्रोएक्टिव हो चुकी है, not only in terms of augmenting with some of the major operations, like we have Operation Parakram, we have Operation Operation Sindoor, we have the creation of NIA, NetGrid, cross-border terrorism, certain international collaboration, but in many more as well. CRPF का इस्तेमाल बखूबी ये सब इन सब चीजों के अंदर बैठ के लगातार आता है. But before that, the first thing that need to understand is कि भारत के अंदर अगर आतंकवाद लगातार पनप रहा है तो उसके कारण क्या है? The first is the political causes. What political causes? There are certain historical setbacks. I would use the word historical setback that had been there in India. How? That political grievances had generated sentiments of injustice and alienation among the certain groups. For say Khalistani, right, movement in Punjab, insurgency rooted because of the political aspirations in Kashmir, right, and autonomous movement in the northeast. Even in political cause, we know that the weak political representation and governance gaps, especially in the remote and the conflict prone groups, for say in Nagaland, for say in Manipur, for say in JNK, right? This reduces the trust in state institution and creates space for extremist recruitment. एक बात उदाहरण के लिए है that before the Manipur, ये this extremist recruitment वाली बात पे I would like to bring your attention that before that in Manipur, when the case was on a embryoman part, Indian government had to send back one of the USA's people to the US again, because he was found to ignite the extremist tendency among the people of the Manipur. Third, unsettled border dispute with Pakistan and China, the case of POK, and majority of the thing we know that the Afghanistan के अंदर अगर uncertainty है तो उसके कारण भारत के अंदर एक POK की रीजन की तरफ से लगातार आतंकवाद की तरफ लगातार लोग बढ़ते हैं और आतंकवादी घटनाएं हमारे यहाँ होती हैं, right? So this unsettled border disputes that was there onwards 1947 has had a deep rooted reason of having terrorist attack on India's soil. Another socio-economic perspective. पहला कारण है the poverty, unemployment and the lack of development access in the tribal and the rural belts that historically fueled the LWE, which thrives on the narratives that state exploitation versus the people's right? Second, regional imbalance and the poor connectivity. If it is visible in forested and the hilly terrains, that leads to the people that we are being neglected by the state government and we are on our own, which ultimately led to the scenario that they need to start talking about people's right versus state's exploitation, right? Plus lack of education and limited livelihood options, especially among youth, which increases susceptibility to radical ideology and militant propaganda. But perhaps we have witnessed that onwards 2014, this radical ideological point linked with the lack of education has been, I would say, deteriorated or has been changed. With certain example, Kerala say there were 4 engineers who was found or who were caught up by the NIA. They joined the ISIS in Syria. Jodhpur say one engineer, that the third year civil engineering branch student was caught up by the NIA. And in different part, abhi Delhi ke andar, there has been say that there 4 or 1 or 2 or 1 or more MBBS doctors was found indulged in the terrorist activities. So we can witness that the socio-economic factors has changed their causes to be taken place in the with respect to the terrorism upon the India's soil. Third, religious radicalization, which is the very, I would say, very major reason for the terrorist activities on India's soil. How? Extremist interpretation of the religion propagated through sermons, closed group network, ideological schooling can distort community identity and encourage the militancy. and it is still visible in the JNK, in the youth itself. ये बात लगातार बैठ के वहां देखी जा सकती है. One more point you need to understand, that one point is dark web. इंटरनेट के जमाने में ये बात बोली जाती है that the surface web जो हम लोग लगातार इंटरनेट पर देखते हैं, this is only 4%, but 96% of the activities are being done in dark web. 96%. And most of the time these radical groups, they whitewash the minds of the young people on dark web. इसमें समस्या क्या होती है? इसमें समस्या ये होती है कि जब जब इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसी इनके पीछे लगातार पढ़ना चाहती है, they got to know that within 90 days, within 70 days or within 100 days जो साइट्स हैं वो ऑपरेट करना बंद कर जाती हैं, leaving no trace to found them. It gives a very greater challenge for security agencies to tackle them, right? वहां पे बैठ के रिलीजियस रेडिकलाइजेशन का एक बहुत बड़ा गेम चलता है. प्लस ऑनलाइन रेडिकलेशन, the point we have just discussed. Third, transnational jihadi narratives. How? Including those propagated by ISIS, Al-Qaeda, have influenced some fringe groups in India, though on a limited scale compared to the other regions. एक और बात समझने की जरूरत है दिस रेडिकल के पॉइंट में, that external sponsorship and the geopolitics is even one of the very major factor. How? For say the Pakistan's ISI strategically use terrorism as an instrument of state policy. और ये बात हम इसलिए भी कह सकते हैं क्योंकि रिसेंटली यूएन के अंदर पाकिस्तान के प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने ही हिमसेल्फ एडमिटेड दैट वी हैव टू एक्सेप्ट दिस पॉइंट दैट वी हैड गिवन शेल्टर्स टू द टेररिज्म, राइट? Even especially after the Operation Sindhu, there were certain photos where on the death of the terrorist group, there was a crowd including the army personnel of the Pakistani army, which showcase that they are the people who are giving shelter to the terrorist organization. और ये बात visible होती है especially in the case when Pakistan during the 1980s, 1990s, when the Afghanistan was having a different attitude with the Soviet invasion. And then afterwards, onwards 2000, with the American invasion, Pakistan on the one hand was giving a free hand to the Russia, but on the other hand created Taliban, just to make sure that one of my hand will be there in the Afghanistan, and to stop the India's imprint कि वो भारत उसको ऊपर से रोक न ले. Pakistan ignited this Taliban jihad, or that has been accepted by the UN itself. Plus, cross-border sanctuaries in Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar have historically served as a hideouts, logical hubs, recruitment grounds for insurgent groups in the northeast. कैसे? For say, there is another part is Huji. Huji is Harkat ul Jihad al Islam. This is one of the terrorist organization operated from the Bangladesh. But the Bangladesh instability that is going on, or earlier was there, the weak Bangladesh state capacity has made India a crossroad that you have very limited understanding to operate or take any action against this radical Islamist organization. But it has its footprints in India's northern east blocks, and then via online platform they have linked towards the JNK people as well. So this cross-border sanctuaries is still visible in these kind of institutions that is visible upon the India's neighboring countries' soil. Third, foreign funding networks for say Hawala operations, NGO fronts help sustain extremist organization financially. Again मैं आपको एक बात यहाँ याद दिलाना चाहूँगा, 2015 के अंदर भारत सरकार ने 182 NGO को फंड करना बंद कर दिया था और उनको बंदी कर दिया, including two very famous and a bigger NGO organization. The reason was that there was one IB report that granted कि वो सारी एंटी इंडियन और एंटी नेशनल एक्टिविटीज के साथ लगातार लिंक थी. नाउ द इंपैक्ट ऑफ टेररिज्म इन इंडिया अगर भारत के अंदर होता है तो उसके बहुत बड़े कारण क्या है? पहला कारण, द लॉस ऑफ सिविल लाइव्स एंड द सिक्योरिटी पर्सनल रिमेन्स द मोस्ट इमीडिएट एंड विजिबल इंपैक्ट. द टारगेट अटैक्स crowded public space to maximize fear and the casualties, which is quietly visible in recent Delhi attack on the Red Fort. Plus psychological trauma and insecurity. ये बात भी बोलने के बाद इसलिए है because it causes a great difference in the mental behavior and the social behavior of the people affected by a terrorist attack. For example, कल की बात है, a bystander who was witness with these kind of attacks, he said this thing कि जिस तरीके से मैंने लोगों की बॉडीज को उड़ते हुए देखा, इट विल रिमेन इंटैक्ट इन माई माइंडसेट until the moment I will live. So a very mental health disorder and a psychological trauma it will give to the people's health. Third, internal displacement of the communities. For say the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits that was in 1990s, displacement in LW affected tribal areas will disrupt the livelihood and the fracture long standing social ties, which will ultimately have their generation based egos and the clashes to take place. Plus, families of martyrs often face economic, emotional and the social consequences that extend for the generations. Plus, economic impact. For say, after the Pahalgam attack, there will be a general viewpoint of the Indian people that we need not to go to the Kashmir for a certain amount of time. That means it has a suffer, or it has a negatively suffer the tourism, trades and the service industries in the affected regions. Plus, infrastructure destructions for say roads, communication line, public assets. So repairing के अंदर आपको फिर से पैसे खर्च करने की जरूरत पड़ती है. Third, foreign and domestic investor suffers due to risk perception. Investors seek the security of the operations, stable governance and reliable law and order conditions. Right? उदाहरण के लिए, the government of India was earlier asking the world people to come and invest in the J&K, right? But लगातार वहां 3-4 अटैक हुए, चीजें लगातार ठंडे बस्ते में चलेगी और आई वुड से बैकडोर की तरफ चलेगी लगातार बैठ के. सो जो रिस्क परसेप्शन है वो लगातार बैठ के इंटैक्ट रहता है, राइट? गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर इंक्रीजेस ऑन डिफेंस एंड द पार्लियामेंट्री डिप्लॉयमेंट, इंटेलिजेंस एंड काउंटर टेरर ऑपरेशंस, border management, surveillance and the policing activities. This increased secure expenditure divert the resources away from the developmental economic aspect like health, education or the other things associated. Third, social fabric and the communal harmony. सबसे पहला काम ये होता है कि वो distort होता है. How? Because they often aim to create suspicion, deepen divides and provoke the communal tensions in India. Fear, mistrust, stereotyping spread among the communities, weakening the shared identity of the diverse society, or I would say the secular fabric of India. Third, polarization increases as extremist groups exploit societal fault lines, religion, ethnicity, caste, religion, etc. So it resulted in the weakened social cohesion, which makes communities more vulnerable to future radicalization, right? Now, there are certain challenges in countering the terrorism in India. The first and the foremost thing that comes to our mind is that policing is a state subject, right? That means most of the times this प्रकार के internal scenarios को tackle करने के लिए there are the state police at the forefront. Now with the state police, they are lacking the proper training. They are lacking the a proper training of the weaponry systems, the technological setbacks associated with them, and often they have been quoted that they got the job because of the political patronage, and they are ultimately nobled as a notorious people associated within the corruption. Second point, after the police, भारत के अंदर एक MHA है, एक PM Minister office है, right? There are different agencies who are within the two part. For say IB and IPS category, CRPF, the CAPF, they comes under the MHA, but RNW, CBI, they comes under the PMO. So again the point is the coordination between the different kind of the agencies to have a susceptibility linked with the the intelligence that we gather are being governed because of the joint committees. Joint committees के अंदर again the problem associated is the lack of coordination, right? And this lack of coordination is visible with one of the example. 2008 के अंदर जब मुंबई में अटैक हुआ था, then there was a clear cut perception that a seaborne attack is going to take place, but even Coast Guard did not pay heed. The Mumbai police did not pay heed, but Mumbai police anti-terrorist squad pay heed to it. But again the moment by the time they could do something, they got to know जब अटैक हो रहा था उनके पास इक्विपमेंट्स नहीं थे लड़ने के लिए, प्रॉपर ट्रेनिंग नहीं थी लड़ने के लिए, right? So these kind of problems are there associated within our system that needs to be interlinked at first time. Now, external state support and the cross-border network, the challenges. First, for say neighboring state like Pakistan continues to use terrorism as an instrument of state policy, offer training camps, weapons, funding, state havens, intelligence support to groups like JEM, Indian Mujahideen, Hizbul Mujahideen, Elite, etc. And the porous border between Nepal, Myanmar and the Bangladesh even gives a chance for the terrorist people to enter into the Indian soil and make sure that they facilitate this kind of movements of arms, operative, counterfeiting currency, radical propaganda. सॉरी और ये बात विजिबल क्यों है? बिकॉज अभी फरीदाबाद के अंदर 360 किलो आरडीएक्स मिला हुआ है, 360 kd RDX. And why this 360 kd RDX is so important? Because in Pahalgam attack there was said that 60 kg RDX was used, which led to the martyrs of our security forces. So this creates a constant inflow of the logical and ideological support, which makes counter-terrorism efforts more complex and tedious and prolonged in its own nature. Plus, challenging terrain and the local geography for say the region of POK, right? Kashmir, densely forested zones in the Red Corridor, northeast, they allow militants to hide. And harsh geography makes real-time surveillance, communications, troop movement and long duration operations logistically demanding as well. इंटर एजेंसी कोऑर्डिनेशन गैप, अभी इसके बारे में मैंने अब बैठ के आपसे लगातार बैठ के बात करें. दिस इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग दैट वी नीड टू मेंटेन विद, राइट. फोर्थ, टेक्नोलॉजिकल सोफिस्टिकेशन ऑफ द टेरर ग्रुप्स. टेररिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस increasingly use end-to-end encrypted messaging apps. It was visible in 2008 attack when one handler from the Pakistan jail was continuously giving instructions to the the terrorists who were there on the Mumbai in 2008, right? So this makes surveillance, interception, attribution and evidence collection extremely challenging, right? Cyber radicalization allow recruitment without physical contact, creating a lone wolf actors who are harder to detect. In different cell we used to say that they are the sleeper cells, और इंटेलिजेंस ब्यूरो ये बात बोलती है स्लीपर सेल के बारे में पता लगाना इज नियर बाय इम्पॉसिबल. You only get to know about the sleeper cell once they get activated. Otherwise, for years, for 2 years, 6 years, 20 years, they remain inactive. And with their tactics, with their activities, it is impossible to understand that they are the lone wolf attackers. Now, the way forward. What could be the way forward? So, first, strengthen the intelligence and the interagency coordination, right? Second, address root socio-economic causes. Counter online radicalization using digital literacy and the community engagement. Rehabilitation program must be there. Diplomatic pressure, global coalition to isolate state sponsor of the terrorism and invest in modern technology, drones, AI surveillance and the data analytics. मोदी साहब ने एक स्टेटमेंट बोला था that the mercy or the mercy towards the terrorism is up to the God, but to send them to the God is up to me. That means it showcases India's commitment to tackle the terrorism in a very harsh way, and that was visible onwards 2008 जब भारत सरकार ने नेटगेट बनाया, नेशनल इन्वेस्टिगेशन एजेंसी बनाई, अनलॉफुल प्रिवेंशन एक्ट UAPA जो 1967 में बना था, 2019 के अंदर सरकार ने उसके अंदर अमेंडमेंट करा. 2 मेजर अमेंडमेंट थे. पहला, प्रॉपर्टी लिंक्ड विद द पीपल विल बी क्रूसिफाइड. सेकंड पार्ट, we may designate some people as terrorists based on the evidences. This is visible under the UAPA 2019 Amendment Act, right? So we may say that more points based on the changing nature of the terrorism in India and the elsewhere world is visible. Then Indian agency needs to change its stance to terror, tackle the terror agencies. But at this moment, the country, the whole nation, all the agencies, the people associated, we need to get their strengthened and united at the very same time, so that we send a very clear message that the unity of India is supreme. The faith upon our system, the faith upon our government is supreme, and no attack can take our social fabric uproof or aloof from us. Now after that, this is a practice question visible on your screen. Do practices. In case you need any help, feel free to reach out to us at Next IS. Now the second topic visible over screen is Supreme Court says that women are the largest minority, notes their receding presence in Parliament. So this is a statement given by Justice B.V. Nagaratna, and this statement, this I would use the word this largest minority. If the word we need to decode, then this statement of the Supreme Court has definitely given a powerful constitutional and moral framing to start a debate on the lesser political representation of women in India. Especially, although we know that numerical data says that 48% of the women are in India, but their political representation is quite mere. Especially if we link with is the constitutional rights enshrined in Article 14, 15, 1, 16, which says that the government of India has to have a equal or needs to create substantive attempts to create equitable society. But although just giving equal rights to vote does not give the women a equal representation as well. And this is the question that is being asked by the Supreme Court in this topic. Moreover, if we go deeper into this largest minority word, we need to understand that the Supreme Court is trying to say that the women in India is not only a charitable, or the representation of the women in India is not only a charitable concession, but rather we can say that this is more about democratic fairness, political citizenship, and equal share in decision making. So this largest minority word can definitely drive our attention from the question that do women need reservation, to the question that why still in India the women do not have the equal representation. That means one more thing that comes to our mind with respect to this largest minority word is that it is a constitutional obligation. It is a constitutional obligation, and in 2025 it has become a constitutional necessity which is deeply rooted in justice, न्याय, fairness और सत्ता में महिलाओं की भागीदारी, the equal representation of women in the political system. So this we may derive from the word largest minority word. Now we need to understand कि अगर ऐसा है भी तो क्यों है, क्या कारण है. The first is the women form nearly half of India's population, hence the underrepresentation represents a significant democratic deficit. Now representation gap. PRS की एक रिपोर्ट कहती है that the women in India represent around 15% to the Lok Sabha and about 13% to the Rajya Sabha member. But if we case the data of 17th Lok Sabha, it was around 14.4%, but in 18th Lok Sabha, it is around 13.4%. So it shows that 1% dip is still visible in India of the political representation. Moreover, in state assembly, the national average is even lower. Around 9% of the MLAs are in women. Although there are states like Telangana, states like Odisha, उन लोगों ने कुछ मतलब प्रोग्रेस करी है, but not one state in India has given a footprint that the average goes beyond 20%. If we compare a democratic country like India, जहाँ equal justice की बात थोड़ी ज़्यादा होती है, right? We know that India's share of women in national parliaments is even lower than the world average. वर्ल्ड एवरेज 26.9. और अभी एक आईपीयू की एक रिपोर्ट आई थी विमेन इन पार्लियामेंट 2015-2025. उस रिपोर्ट के अंदर आईपीयू ने यह बताया that there are in 1995 there was no country in the world which has the equal representation of the women in world, but at this moment 2025 में वो रिपोर्ट बोलती है कि दुनिया में 6 ऐसे देश हैं, there are 6 states in the world who have equal or more than equal representation of the people, of the women in the parliament. For say Rwanda is there, for say UAE is there, for say Mexico is there, right? For say Namibia is there, Nicaragua is there, Mexico is there. So these 6 countries are there. Now the point is कि इंडिया उस ग्लोबल एवरेज से भी कम है. अगेन इफ आई कंपेयर विद इंडिया विद अ स्मॉल कंट्री लाइक रवांडा है 61% ऑफ द वुमेन्स रिप्रेजेंटेशन, जबकि वो भारत के अंदर कितना है, मात्र दिस 13% इट इज वुमेन, 13%, 61 to 30%. मैक्सिको 50%, निकारागुआ 50%, भारत के अंदर merely 13%. So it gives a startling data कि भारत के अंदर it has become a constitutional necessity to think towards dignity, न्याय, इन सत्ता में भागीदारी. Now second point is under leverage potential. अंडर लेवरेज पोटेंशियल का मतलब क्या है? जैसे मान के चलिए कि अगर मैं सिर्फ और सिर्फ ये बात बोलता हूं, जैसे भारत के अंदर लगातार ये बात बोली जाती है कि जो वुमेन है बिकॉज ऑफ देयर हेल्थ, सेफ्टी, इकोनॉमिक पार्टिसिपेशन may receive less voice or the priorities. But this under leverage potential के अंदर भी there are certain data from the state like Rajasthan and from the state like Maharashtra जो हमको बैठ के ये बात कहती हैं that at the very same time जब 1993 में 73rd amendment हमारे पास आया which led to the more women representation to take place in the ग्राम सभा और in the पंचायती राज, which led a very drastic result which is visible in 2023-2024. और वो आज ही भारत सरकार लगातार बैठ के मानती है. वो डेटा क्या है? वो डेटा ये कहता है कि स्पेशली इन द केस ऑफ राजस्थान वेयर still we say that there are certain patriarchal norms still prevalent among the minds of the people, but still in the rural areas in the Rajasthan and the Maharashtra, when women has started moving beyond their indoors, मतलब अपने गेट के बाहर निकलना शुरू कर दिया है, it was still reflecting in the mindset that now they want their daughter to go and got taught in the school. उनकी शादी की उम्र लगातार बच्चों की लगातार बढ़ती जा रही है. So this is the data which is visible nowadays. So under leverage potential को हम लोग इन डेटा के साथ में लगातार बैठ के कंपेयर कर सकते हैं. प्लस कुछ डेटा के बारे में और बात कर लेते हैं हम. जैसे मान के चलिए कि भारत ये दिस इज द डेटा ऑफ द वर्ल्ड 2025 में 27.2 के आसपास का ये पूरा वर्ल्ड में वुमेन का पार्लियामेंट में डेटा है. भारत के अंदर क्या है? वन मोर थिंग पॉइंट दैट द एवरेज एज ऑफ द वुमेन इन इंडिया इज 49 years. Now, before that, one thing that you need to understand is that there are around 22% of the women between 25 to 40 years, right? Around 64% of the women between 41 to 60 years, and hardly 14% of the women are there, which is 61 to 18%. So, मतलब 86% of the women parliamentarians in India, चाहे वो MLA हो चाहे वो MP हो, मैं दोनों की बात कर रहा हूं यहाँ पे, right? 86% are between the age of 25 to 60. That means we have a more range to be taken place in near future. उनका impact भारत के अंदर थोड़ा ज़्यादा होने की संभावना है. प्लस ये एक डेटा है जो आपको बताता है that 17% women are billionaire. एवरेज एसेट जो वुमेन का है वो 20 करोड़ के आसपास का बताया है. There was certain 3 cases out of 537 women MLAs and MPs that was being conducted by the PRS and the ADR. उन्होंने बोला 3 women ऐसे थे जिनके they have the murder chances. 12 women were have the cases where the attempt to murder charges were there associated. Now the percentage of sitting women MLAs with declared criminal cases, see, लोकसभा में around 75%, राज्यसभा 37 is there. आप कोई भी ऐसी एक पार्टी नहीं है, कोई भी not a single party in India at this moment as per this the report of PRS and this ADR which do not have a women with a criminal case. सबके पास लगातार केस ही केस है, right? So this point is quite visible. अब बात ये आती है what would be the significance once we have the women in the more representation. The first it will be strengthening democracy. How? The meaningful representation of the women can heighten the legitimacy of the democratic institution and reduce the representation deficit. Or right? Plus policy outcomes, gender sensitive governance, ये दुनिया के अंदर पूरे पर एक रिपोर्ट है, व्हेन द मोर वुमेन आर देयर एट द प्रेजेंटर्स, द मोर नंबर और द मोर एडवांटेज लिंक टू द वुमेन स्पेसिफिक स्कीम्स. प्लस social cultural transformation. Once you know the visible female political leadership challenge the patriarchal norms, inspire the younger women, and may encourage greater civic engagement among the women, which is visible in the case of Maharashtra and the Rajasthan Panchayati women, right? Economic linkage. They are interconnected with the broader empowerment for say education, labor force participation, जो आज की तारीख में करीब भारत के अंदर 37% के आसपास है, right? So representation is just one piece in the larger, pizza or puzzle of gender equality in India. But now there are certain challenges. सबसे पहला चैलेंज तो मुझे लगता है कि दैट भारत के अंदर स्ट्रक्चरल बैरियर्स है. स्ट्रक्चरल बैरियर्स फॉर से majority of the time we got to know that the women are being given ticket in the political parties all because they are the political patronage of a specific leader. या फिर वो उनको सोचते हैं दैट यू आर नॉट गेटिंग अ टिकट बेस्ड ऑन योर मेरिट बट बिकॉज ऑफ द क्रक्स दैट आई एम ट्राइंग टू गिव टू यू. नाउ फॉर दैट मैटर इंटरनाइजेशन और वैसे द मैंडेट टू द पॉलिटिकल पार्टी शुड बी देयर कि वो अपनी पार्टी के अंदर 33% जो टिकट्स हैं कम से कम वुमेन को दे. स्ट्रक्चर वेरी में ये है. दूसरा, लो सक्सेस रेट. जैसे देयर इज अ फैक्टर ऑफ पॉलिटिकल और द विनेबिलिटी. तो विनेबिलिटी फैक्टर सबसे ज्यादा एसोसिएटेड रहता है टू दोज वुमेन हु आर लिंक्ड विद द घरानास. सो अल्टीमेटली इन द पॉलिटिकल रिफ्लेक्शन वी मे हैव द वुमेन रिप्रेजेंटेशन दो आर लिंक्ड विद द either the political घरानास or coming with the very high hierarchy of the society. Why? Because of the winnability syndrome. Third, tokenism and the substantive representation. Merely increasing numbers does not guarantee substantive influence. So the danger of women being nominated, elected but constrained by the party and house the dynamics. Implementation delay and the legal technical changes. 2008 के अंदर भारत के अंदर ये एक एक्ट आया था जिसमें हम वुमेन को 33% का रिप्रेजेंटेशन दे रहे थे. नाउ दैट 2008 के अंदर जो बिल लोकसभा के अंदर पेश हुआ, इट गॉट पास इन 2002-3 अमेंडमेंट विद द नेम नारी शक्ति वंदनम अधिनियम. 2008 से 2023 15 years, right? Resource and the capability gap. Women legislators in many cases are not having equal access to campaign funds, political experiences or the party backing, all because of the political winnability factors. Now, this is the practice question visible over your screen. Do practice it and let us know the answer in the comment section. Now, another topic visible over your screen is the India-Bhutan relationship. We know that the Prime Minister Modi has been on a 2 days visit to Bhutan. So now the point is how Bhutan is geostrategically important for India's domain. Now, before that, we need to understand that the relationship between India and Bhutan is often described as one of the most stable and the time-tested bilateral relationship in the South Asia, right? Historical foundation. Relationship between the India and Bhutan, I would say the diplomatic relationship between the India and the Bhutan started in the Treaty of Friendship in 1949, under which India assured non-interference in Bhutan's internal affairs, and Bhutan agreed to consult India on the external matters. The treaty was revised in 2007 to reflect Bhutan's increased confidence in global outreach with two parts. First, recognize Bhutan's sovereignty right to conduct foreign policy independently. Second, emphasizes mutual respect and equal partnership. Now the point is why this is significant. क्यों भारत लगातार भूटान के बारे में सोचता है? छोटा सा देश है. Now the point is first, stability in the Himalayan region. Bhutan serves as a geostrategic buffer between India and the China, especially after the annexation of the Tibet with China, right? In 1962, I remember one of the brigadiers in India had said that nowhere in the world you have the geographical map where two gigantic countries share the border together, which is definitely for the future is not a very good part. और 1962 के अंदर हम लोगों ने बैठ के एक छोटा मोटा skirmish between the India and the China was visible. So Bhutan serves as a geostrategic buffer for that matter, right? That means partnership plays a key role in maintaining peace and stability in the Himalayan region. Plus, India supports Bhutan in border management, intelligence cooperation, military training. Bhutan coordinated stance with India during the Doklam standoff, demonstrated the strength to its security partnership with India. In early 2000, Bhutan launched Operation All Clear to remove Indian insurgent groups operating from the Bhutanese territory. Economic cooperation, especially in the field of hydropower, which is the pillar. India has helped Bhutan with the major hydropower projects for, say, Chuka is there, Tala is there, Kurthang and Mingchuk is there. Ye points is important for your prelims exam. Now the electricity generated is used domestically in Bhutan and sold to India. Though early earns Bhutan significant revenue, which is around 14 to 18% of the Bhutan's GDP, and it helps India to meet its energy needs for the people, right? So this hydropower relationship between the two nations binds together, one for the economic aspect, second for the economic hunger aspect. Development assistance, India helps in infrastructure, education and the skill development, health scenario for say emergency secure capacity building, civil service की जो training होती है वो उन लोगों की लबासना के अंदर होती है. So all those things are there जहां इंडिया डेवलपमेंट असिस्टेंस भी लगातार बैठ के साथ में देता ही देता है. Cultural to people connection, for say the shared Buddhist heritage, language links and the cultural festivals. It provides higher level of mutual trust. Bhutan remains one of the few neighbors where India does not have any major disputes, right? So there is a better people to people connections with country. But now there are certain challenges. The picture is not as rosy as it seems. The challenge first is Chinese influence and Bhutan-China boundary talks. It could definitely shape the future regional balance, which India needs to monitor closely and need to meddle if needed. Hydropower project delays, cost overruns, environmental concerns require joint project management reform. Yeah, one Chinese influence Bhutan-China boundary talks is why so important. Because I know that there was one of the the P. Stoban Saab, the former ambassador to China. He extensively wrote just before the Doklam issue. वो भारत को बोला करते थे that this road must not be captured by the Chinese army. और कैप्चर की बात तो बहुत दूर है, उनकी प्रेजेंस भी वहां नहीं होनी चाहिए. Even at the cost of war, you fought a war, but you cannot let the Chinese stay near the Doklam crisis. और हम लोगों ने बाद में देखा उनकी बात को भारत सरकार ने तवज्जो दी या और इंटेलिजेंस ने तवज्जो दी होगी, बट डोकलाम का एक पूरा स्क्रिमिश हमारे सामने हुआ था, राइट? दिस इज द भूटान चाइना बाउंड्री टॉक्स. उस बात के बारे में सिग्निफिकेंटली हमको बैठ के समझाता है. थर्ड, द यूथ एम्प्लॉयमेंट इन भूटान. They needs the more diversified cooperation beyond the hydropower for say ICT, tourism, startups. So again, the Indian government needs to spend money or give training, the development assistance in different parts as well. Now this is the practice question visible over the screen. Do write it. Let us know the answer. Now the fourth topic, which is EIR, right? So this is Entrepreneur in Residence program that has been recently augmented by the Dr. Jiten Singh. He said that India is already initiated to next industrial revolution driven by the biotechnology. So with prelims perspective, this is important topic, right? Why leap? Because Indian biotechnology leap from US 10 billion to US 300 billion dollars. Now what are the major highlights of this BIRAC initiative, right? EIR. First, India's bioeconomy has scaled to US 300 billions, right, which has a target to become 300 billion in coming years. Second, the country is among the few globally to have dedicated biotechnology policy termed Bio E3, that is bioeconomy, emerging ecosystem and the biotech. Third, launch of the BRIC Entrepreneurship in Residence program and inauguration of the NHPABSL3 high biosafety facility, which signal infrastructure and the translational research commitment within India. And over the last 3 years, the BRIC has have around 3190 publications, 107 patents, 13 technology commercialized, 2578 PhD scholars and 678 post doctoral fellowship, which says कि इंडिया का जो यूथ पूल है टूवर्ड्स द बायोटेक्नोलॉजी वो लगातार बैठ के आगे की तरफ बढ़ रहा है. नाउ द इंप्लीकेशंस फॉर द इंडिया साइंस एंड इकोनॉमी, अगर लगातार बढ़ेगा उसका फायदे क्या होंगे? द फर्स्ट फायदा इज The first and the foremost is job creation and the human capital. With thousands of the PhDs and the postdocs in BRIC network, India will build a pipeline of biotechnology research and the professionals. Second, startup ecosystem. Entrepreneurship in residence program, innovation parks and industry collaboration creates pathways for the transnational research to the market, which will ultimately lead to the way forward for the startup to take place in India. Why? Because once the economic benefit will take place, the more startups will come. Export competitiveness, जैसे लगातार कंपनी होंगी, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग होंगे, तो बायोटेक्नोलॉजी बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स होंगे, आपके पास होंगी भरमार होगी, आप उनको बैठ के जाके आप लगातार बैठ के आगे बढ़ सकते हो. Especially in the case when the government of India is having a more tilt or focus toward the manufacturing boom up in India. Last, linkage the across sectors. For say, the document points out that biotechnology partnering with agriculture, medical research, data science industry, this cross synergy is vital for the fourth industrial revolution driven by the biotechnology in India. Now, this is the practice question visible over your screen. Do practices. Let us know the answer in the comment section. Now, the last topic of today's DNA, which is the Mitra Shakti exercise. This is a joint military exercise and the 11th edition, right? Why this topic is important? Because UPSC ने 2024 के अंदर पूरा एक प्रीलिम्स बेस्ड क्वेश्चन में मिशन शक्ति के ऊपर ऐसे करके बैठ के पूछा हुआ था. तो these kind of exercises are becomes very important. Now, what are the highlights today or the key details? First, Indian contingent had around 170 personnel primarily for Rajput regiment. ये वर्ड प्रीलिम्स के लिए बहुत जरूरी है. श्रीलंका 135 primarily for Gajaba regiment. Air Force 20% for the Air Force, 10 from the Sri Lankan. And it emphasizes interoperability, shared tactics and mutual learning between the two nations forces. Now the part is, इसके significance क्या होता है? So the first and the foremost significance is understand the interoperability. Interoperability क्या होता है? अलग अलग मशीन्स को एक साथ कम समय में ज्यादा किस प्रकार से बैठ के उपयोग कर सकते हैं. This conjunction is being used with the word interoperability. So, the first and the foremost thing is interoperability, which will lead to this operational readiness and modern warfare skills. How? Because both the countries, India and Sri Lanka, will learn something from each other. For say, Sri Lanka will learn from the Indian large forces and India will learn from the Sri Lanka that how they may be tackling the counter terrorism operation from its soil. तो भारत के लिए लगातार different terrain पे काम करने का काम मिल जाएगा. This is the first thing. Second thing, disaster response preparedness movement will be there, right? हमको लगातार बैठ के इन सब चीजों के बारे में लगातार प्रयास रहेगा. Plus, it will create as a deterrence and will lead to the regional stability. So, once the countries who are trying an eye over this particular region, they know that the two countries are together and the better interoperability is there, operational readiness is there, it creates as a deterrence. Plus, this part हो गया, sign of deterrence and diplomacy we already have discussed, right? So, this is the importance of this part. Plus, last we may say that the capability enhancement will be there as the part as well. Capability enhancement. Why capability enhancement? Because ultimately they will not be go with the theoretical aspect, but rather they will be testing it on a realistic purposes or the realistic scenarios. So, it will ultimately augment the capability enhancement scenario for both the armies, India and the Sri Lanka both. Now, this is one objective question visible over your screen. Do practices and let us know the answer in the comment section. This is all for today's DNA, my dear friends, my dear students. I hope that the topic we discussed, we tried to provide the justice to you people and you people understood thoroughly and well. In case you need any help, feel free to reach out to us at the next IS. You like the video, please like the video and comment for sure. Do watch daily news analysis and keep studying. All the best.